All right, before we start talking about circle graphs specifically, let me prep you a little bit for this lesson. The main idea of this lesson is that we are finding a fraction of a circle, right? Think about what we do when we want to find a fraction of something. Let's say I wanted to find 1/2 of 100. Well, there's two ways I could do this. I could multiply 1/2 times 100, right? I would get 100 over 2, which is 50. Or I could convert 1/2 to a decimal, and I could multiply the decimal for 1/2 times 100, which would also be 50. But regardless, whether you're more comfortable with fractions or decimals, the process is still the same. When we want to find a fraction of something, we multiply, right? So we multiplied here to find a fraction of 100. We multiplied here to find a fraction, changed to a decimal, of 100, right? When you want to find a fraction of something, you multiply. Let's try another one. What if I wanted to find 2/3 of 15? I would multiply 2/3 times 15. That would give me 30 over 3, which is 10. In this case, I wouldn't convert 2/3 to a decimal because this is one of our repeaters, right? So it's a little bit neater to just leave it in fraction form instead of converting it to a repeating decimal and then getting something that we have to round, right? So when we want to find a fraction of something, we use either the fraction or decimal form of that number and multiply. Now in circle graphs, we're always going to be finding the fraction of a full circle. How many degrees are in a full circle? Anyone know? So in a full circle, there are 360 degrees. So if we wanted to know what 2/3 of that would be, we would do 2/3 times 360. If we wanted to know what's 5/9 of that amount, we would do 5/9 times 360. That's what we're going to be doing in this lesson. We're going to be finding fraction of 360. All right, so let's try it out. So we have a summer camp. There were 100 campers, and they were asked which lake activity was their favorite. So we have the results in the table. If we were to make a circle graph, which lake activity has a central angle of 46.8 degrees? All right, so let's find the central angle for each one. So kayaking, I'll just put a K for kayaking since there's nothing else that starts with a K, is 15 out of 100, right? 15 out of 100 campers chose kayaking. So 15 out of 100, we can write that as a decimal, right? Or we could keep it in fraction form. Either way is fine. If I write this as a decimal, it would be 0.15. What do I get when I multiply that by 360? I don't know. Let's find out. Let me grab my calculator. 0.15 times 360 is 54. So this would have a central angle of 54. So right away, we know that 46.8 is just a little bit smaller than 54. So it's probably not going to be windsurfing, right? I can't write on that. It's probably not going to be windsurfing because that's half. That's a lot smaller, right? That's a little less than half. And it's probably not going to be paddle boarding because that's a lot bigger than 15. So that means it's either going to be wakeboarding or water skiing. So let's try them. So wakeboarding is 11 out of 100, which is 0.11, 11 hundredths. Let's multiply that by 360 and see what we get. Oh, that one is too small. That one is 39.6 degrees. So that leaves water skiing. We can check it though, just to make sure and for the extra practice. 13 over 100 is 13 hundredths. When we multiply that by 360, we get the number we were looking for, 46.8. So water skiing will result in a central angle of 46.8. All right, here we have, let me get that out of the way. Caleb observed costumes that people wore, and the themes and the number of people who wore them are shown in the table. A circle graph was drawn from the data. What percentage would be on the decades slice of the circle graph? Now notice this is not asking you for a degree measure. This is asking you for a percentage or what fraction of, right? So whenever we're trying to figure out like a fraction of something, we've got the amount that we're looking for out of the total, right? Like we just did on the last problem, the number who chose water skiing over the total amount of campers. So what percentage would be decades is going to be the number of people who chose decades out of the total. So we know 96 people chose decades. Let's see what the total is. They don't tell us in the problem, which is a little annoying. It means we have to add them all up. So I've got 128, wait, let me clear. 128 plus 96 for decades plus 72 for scary plus 52 for TV and movies plus 24 for animals plus 28 for career gives me 400 people. Now, my natural inclination is to write this over 100 because I know that these are both divisible by 4. So 96 divided by 4 is 24. So 24 over 100 means it's 24%. Now, what if you're saying, okay, Mrs. Vargas, but I didn't see that? That's okay. If you do 96 divided by 400, you will get 0.24. You'll get the same answer I did. All right, so 24% would be the decades slice. And now if we wanted to find the number of degrees, we would just multiply that 0.24 times 360. Okay. Sandwich shop owner observed the first 100 sandwich orders of the day. Good, they gave us the total. The data obtained is given in the table. Which of the following circle graphs correctly represents the data in the table? Okay, so let me move my, okay. So let's look. We've got turkey and chicken look like they're pretty close to each other, right? So turkey is 30 and chicken is 35. So they should be pretty similar. And, oh, okay. So far the first one looks good. Turkey is 30, chicken is 35. Then we have that ham is 20%, all right, and vegetarian is 15%. Oh, looks like, I know maybe you can't see the last one, but it looks like the first one is the one that's labeled correctly. And I mean, it looks like 15 is about half as big as 30. 20% is a little bit bigger than 15, but smaller than 30, right? It all looks about right. The 30% is a little smaller than the 35%. And the percents that we see here in the circle graph match the percents in the table. So not even any calculations we had to do for that one. Okay. So now this one. Marley surveyed the students in 7th grade I don't know why that's there, to determine which type of social media they most commonly used, and then put it in a table. Which of the following correctly represents the data? Now, this time we don't have the percents, right? But we can find them, right? We can find it the same way we did on the second question. We just put the number for each one over the total. We're not given the total, so let's find it. It's funny how they put like headbook and pictogram. Okay, so 85 plus 240 plus 125 plus 50 is 500. So let's look at headbook first. If I do, I'm going to write them up here. If I do 80, I'll do H. If I do 85 out of 500, I can divide that. I'm going to do it, I'm going to divide them by 5, right? Because I know if I can get 100 on the bottom, then that's a percent, right? Hundredths and percent mean the same thing. So what is 85 divided by 5? 17. So this one is 17%. Now, if you don't like that method, you can do 85 divided by 500. Just remember, it's top divided by bottom, and you'll get 0.17, also 17%. Okay, so now pictogram is 240 over 500. That's almost half, right? So divide by 5. 240 divided by 5 is 48. All right, so can I tell so far? So which one has headbook as 17 and pictogram as 48? All right, so far they all have that except for, oh wait, no they don't. Only the first one again. I know you may not be able to see all of the last one, but the last one has the 48% as tweeter. So once again, it's the first one. All right, circle graph describes the distribution of preferred music from a sample of 400 randomly selected middle school students. Which of the following conclusions can we draw from the circle graph? All right, so hip hop is the preferred music for 25 students. Okay, so it's the preferred music for 25%, but 25% is not the same as 25 students. So what is 25%? Well, let's find it. So if I want to find 25% of 400, I'm going to do 0.25 times 400. That's the same as finding 1/4 of 400. So you may be able to do that in your head. That's 100. So 100 students fall in this category. It's 25%, but 25% of 400 is 100. All right, good? All right, let's look at, so that one's not true. So let's look at, it's not this one. Let's look at part B. Together, pop and jazz are the preferred music for over half. If I add pop, which is 35%, to jazz, which is 14%, 35 plus 14 is 49%. That is not over half. Over half would be over 50%, right? So nope. Classical is the preferred music for 52 students. Okay, so classical says 13%. So let's find 13% of 400. So 13% times 400 is 0.13 times 400 is 52. Dun, 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 dun. So that's the one. 13% of the students prefer classical music, and that would be 52 students. All right, 500 total. How many middle school students prefer documentaries? Okay, so, ooh, we're not given a percent for documentary, right? They don't tell us, but they tell us all the rest of the percents. So what do you think we should do? Well, we know that all together we have to get 100% of the circle filled, right? So let's see what percents we've got so far. We've got 22, 14. I should really put on my glasses. I think that says 20 and 20. So far we've got 76. When I add up the percents that were given, 22, 14, 20, and 20, let me grab my glasses. That gives us 76, right? Let me just make sure. Oh yeah, that's better. Okay, so if we need it to add up to 100, then we've got 100 minus 76 is 24. I don't know why I used a calculator for that. So 24% prefer documentaries. So now we're not done though. That doesn't mean 24 students. That means 24% of the students. So now we need to find 24% of 500. So convert to a decimal and multiply. So 0.24 times 500, and I get 120 students. All right, I've got one more for you. At the 2022 Winter Olympics, one country won a total of 150 medals. How many gold and bronze medals were won? Okay, so 150 medals, right? That's the total. So of the 150 medals, right, 30% were silver, 20% were gold, 50% were bronze. It asks how many gold and bronze medals were won. So let's start with gold. The gold medals that were won were 20% of 150. So how do we find a percent of a number? Same thing, right? Convert to a decimal and multiply. So 0.2 times 150, 30. And then how many bronze medals? So bronze is 50%. So 50% of 150 is 75. So how many gold and bronze were won? We add them together. That's it. As always, any questions, let me know, and I'll talk to you soon.